What's going on, music creators? It's your boy Fly Guy Jay, and I'm back with another video. Now on today's episode of Wavy Wednesdays, we'll be taking a closer look at the AutoTune Real-Time plugin. AutoTune Real-Time is a plugin that corrects the pitch of your vocal performance in real time. Its price point makes it a great alternative to other pitch correction plugins such as AutoTune, and its near zero latency makes it ideal to use for live performances, and also a great plugin to use if you want to hear that pitch AutoTune effect while you're tracking your vocals in the studio. To demonstrate this plugin, I'll be pulling up a Pro Tools session for a client by the name of Hookman Q. He sent me this song to be mixed down, and he wanted to have that robotic pitch correction effect on his vocals. Now, before we dive into the plugin, if you're new to the channel or you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you can get notifications of future videos and help my channel grow. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so first things first, when you're using the AutoTune Real-Time plugin, you want to make sure that you have it as the first insert in your plugin chain. Now, when you first pull up the plugin, these are going to be the default settings. Now, before I go over all the controls of this plugin, I'm going to bypass the AutoTune Real-Time plugin and play back the recorded vocals without the pitch correction.
Know what's the vibe you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know what's the vibes you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know what's the vibe?
So you can hear there's certain parts of that vocal performance where he's a little out of key. And by using this AutoTune Real-Time, we'll be able to not only correct that pitch, but we'll also be able to use it more extreme to give it that robotic AutoTune type of sound. So let's go ahead and engage this plugin.
Know what's the vibes you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know what's the vibes you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on.
All right, so the first thing you want to do when using this plugin is identify the key and the scale and set those settings down here at the bottom of the plugin. So for this particular song, I went ahead and I've identified that the beat is in the key of C minor. So we'll go ahead to the scale section down here. We'll select C and we'll change the scale to natural minor. And now you can see by looking at the keyboard here, all of the keys that have this pink box with the white minus sign are now excluded from our pitch correction. So now all the notes in our vocal performance will be moved away from any of these keys that have the minus sign and shifted to the next key that is actually in tune with our instrumental. So it's very important to make sure you set the key and the scale correctly down here, because that will help the algorithm that the plugin uses identify which notes are in key, and any notes that you sing out of key, the plugin will now know to move to the next nearest note that is in key. Once you have the correct key and scale identified, the next thing you're going to want to do is come up here to this correction control section, and you're going to want to adjust the speed and the note transition settings. The speed knob determines how fast a note that is out of pitch will be moved to the correct pitch. The main thing you need to know with the speed knob is if you want to have that robotic sounding pitch correction, then you should lower this down to 0.1. And if you're looking for a more natural sounding pitch correction, then you would increase this to taste. The note transition control determines how fast the correction will take place when you change from one note to the next note. Again, if you want that extreme robotic sound, then you should lower this all the way down. If you want something more natural sounding in your transition between notes, then you would increase this to taste. Another cool feature is this link button. And when you engage this, it basically links the speed and the note transition knobs together. So when you increase one, the other will follow suit. This tolerance section, I really don't play with this section at all. I just leave it alone. All you really need to know about these controls is that they only affect the note transition. They don't affect the speed. If you have a well-trained vocalist who can stay close to key, then usually you leave this setting off or you have it at a very low number. If you have a singer who's tired or inexperienced or has a hard time holding a note, then you may want to adjust these and increase them to taste. The main thing you need to realize about these tolerance settings is that when you increase either of these knobs, you're basically delaying how fast the note transition will happen. Again, I usually leave these off and the plugin works just fine. This vibrato section down here tells the plugin how to deal with any natural vibrato that happens in the vocal performance. If you leave this button off, then you'll get a more extreme robotic sounding pitch effect. If you engage this button, then it'll try to preserve some of the natural vibrato in your voice. You can choose to either preserve the natural vibrato by leaving it at 100%, decrease the amount of vibrato in the voice by lowering it anywhere below 100, or you can exaggerate the amount of vibrato in the voice by increasing it past 100. The exaggerated vibrato is an effect that you can hear on a lot of the Post Malone songs. The next section we'll go over is this correction knob. You want to make sure you have this correction button on if you want the pitch correction to take place. If you have this button off, then this plugin is not going to move and correct any of the out of tune notes in tune. This knob here controls the amount of correction that will be applied to the out of tune notes. So you can choose to take an out of tune note and move it directly in tune by leaving this at 100%. Or you can choose to move a out of tune note slightly in tune by going anywhere under 100. So for example, if you had it set at 50, it would take your out of tune note and it would move it halfway in tune. So if it was 40 cents out of tune, it would move it up 20 cents. Whereas if you put it at 100 and your note was 40 cents out of tune, it will move it up 40 cents to be exactly in tune. So I usually leave this at 100. What you need to know about this format button here is that if you have it on not corrected, then the pitch shifting that happens when you use this plugin may not sound like a natural human voice. It can sound extreme and robotic. If you want the pitch correction to sound more like a natural human pitch change, then you want to have the format put to corrected. This reference section down here, don't even mess with this. Leave it set to 440. Also, this MIDI input / keyboard section down here, I don't mess with that either. The only time you'd really want to use this is if you are trying to play MIDI notes and have the tune be set directly to whatever notes you're playing. The last control we'll talk about is the range, and the range shows up on the keyboard as the white notes. So when you have it set to generic, it's covering many octaves of the keyboard, so it's a very wide range. If you want to focus on just the bass notes, you can select bass and you see that it's shifted now to just the lower octaves. If you want to set it to soprano, you'll see that it's picking some of the higher octaves. What you have to realize about the range is that any of these notes that are in the gray area will be bypassed. They will not be affected by the pitch correction plugin. Only the notes in the white area will have any pitch correction done to them. So if you're singing high notes up here, but it's not in your range, then the plugin will not correct those notes. So you might want to change to soprano. You can also drag and extend the range if you're hitting some notes up here. So basically, when we play back our audio through this plugin, we'll be able to see what notes we're hitting and adjust the range accordingly. Now that I've given you an overview of what all the controls do, I'll engage the plugin and we'll play back our audio through the WavTune Real-Time plugin, and we'll start making some adjustments.
Know what's the vibes you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements.
So you can see that our notes are down here,
but I'm trying to put
so we want to adjust our range to bass.
You be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagement.
And now you can hear that the plugin is taking effect.
I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know what's the vibes you be chasing? Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know it's the vibe.
Let's link the speed and note transition.
Find you a guy that like engagements.
And we'll try to get a more natural sound
know you
by
sick and tired
increasing.
Of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on.
So you can hear when I increase the speed and note transition, you start to get a more natural sounding pitch correction. And then we'll also play with this correction mix knob.
Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing.
No correction.
Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing.
So you'll notice when I increase this correction knob from 1 to 100, the correction meter here, you'll see a wider meter as I move closer to 100, because I'm taking that out of tune note and I'm moving it a further distance in order to get it in tune. Check it out.
Know it's the vibes you be
Barely any
chasing.
movement.
Find you a guy that like engagement.
Some movement, some
Know you sick
correction.
and tired of replacements. I know you ain't
Lots of
wrong, but I'm
correction.
trying to put you on.
So that gives you a visual display of how far that note is being moved in order to get in key.
Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm trying to put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements.
So I'm going to settle on these settings here. And the last thing I want to talk about that I didn't go over was you have the ability to, one, set your own scale by going to user scale and then selecting which notes that you want to be in your custom user scale. So by default, when you select user scale, everything is removed. So you have to enable which notes you'd like to keep in the tuning algorithm. If you have group octaves enabled like it is now, then when I change, for example, the C, then it'll change every C in the upper and lower octaves. Whereas if I didn't have the group octaves button enabled, then when I remove this C note, it's only going to remove that one note. It's not going to remove C3, C4, C1, etc. Also, we can get a little more specific and we could tell this algorithm that every time the singer hits this note here, we want it to be moved to the next available note, which would be this black note. And you can see that by the right arrow. And we could say if the singer hits this note here, we want it to be moved to the left note, which is C2. Or we could say, hey, if they hit this note, we actually want them to go right to also to this note. We don't want them to go back to C2. We want them to go up to E. You have the same options when you choose a specific scale. For example, we're in C minor. We could say we want C minor, except we want to remove D also. And now you made a semi-custom scale. So just a quick recap of what we talked about today. When you're using this plugin, make sure it's the first insert in your plugin chain. When you pull it up, the first thing you want to do is set the key in the scale. Then you want to adjust your speed and your note transition settings. Make sure your correction button is on. Set it to 100% if you want out of tune notes to be moved exactly in tune. Leave the vibrato button off, or you can engage the button and then increase or decrease the amount of vibrato. Leave the formant button in corrected mode if you want to have a more natural sounding pitch shift going on, or put it to not corrected if you want a more robotic sound with some unnatural sounding artifacts being introduced when it changes pitches. And lastly, make sure you set your range. If your singer is singing notes up here, then you're going to want to either drag this over or choose a range that fits where the singer is actually singing. So hopefully this deep dive into the WavTune real-time plugin gave you guys a better understanding of how you can use this plugin to tweak your vocal performances and get those AutoTune notes back in tune. If you guys enjoyed the tutorial or if you learned something new, make sure you give me a thumbs up. And again, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you can get notifications of future videos. If you guys have any specific Waves plugins that you would like me to review in future videos, drop a comment and let me know. Lastly, the artist that you're hearing in this song goes by the name of Hookman Q. If you guys want to hear the full version of this song, I'll leave a link in the description. If you guys are interested in my mixing and mastering services, feel free to hit me up on Instagram at @TheRealFlyGuyJ or go to flyguyj.com and send me a message through the contact form requesting mixing and mastering services. Until next time, keep learning, keep creating, and keep grinding. I'm out.
Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagements. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I'm tryna put you on. Know it's the vibes you be chasing. Find you a guy that like engagement. Know you sick and tired of replacements. I know you ain't wrong, but I gotta put you on. I'ma get you lit cause you the one I'm with. You know how I get it going when I do my. I can only you right, it's like a glove fit. We can keep this going till relationships.